On July 7, 1944, 5,000 fanatical Japanese soldiers launched the largest banzai charge in history, and 3 Americans stood in their path. A colonel with twin pistols, a dying private with one last magazine, and a dentist-turned-machine gunner became an unstoppable wall of defiance. Their sacrifice didn't just save their brothers. It changed the course of the Pacific War. This is the untold story of the Saipan 3. Friday, July 7, 1944. A 5,000-man Japanese board swarmed down. Saipan's Tanapag plane, bayonets fixed, voices thundering banzai. The Americans were ripped awake into hell, grenades blasting, rifles snapping, and the primal screams of absolute savage hand-to-hand combat. On the line, a colonel charged forward, twin M1911 pistols, one in each hand, firing point-blank as he shouted for his men to hold the line. A private, bleeding out, dragged himself against a tree, lit a cigarette, drew his pistol, and dropped wave after wave until the hammer fell on empty steel. And a dentist ripped a .30 caliber machine gun to life like the angel of death's scythe, mowing down wave after wave as corpses stacked high in front of his sights. 3 warriors of the 105th Infantry, 3 medals of honor. This is the unbelievable true story of how 3 Americans crushed the largest banzai attack in history. They were the Saipan 3. Saipan, gateway to Japan. Music. Hello, hello. Stop thinking and follow your God. Emperor, cried the Japanese warlords. And Japan will rule the world. And the people answered, Bonsai, Bonsai. June 1944. The island of Saipan, jungle, cliffs, and volcanic rock in the middle of the Pacific. But to the men about to hit its beaches, this wasn't just another island. It was Japanese soil. This mattered. Saipan sat only 1,500 m from Tokyo. From here, America's new long-range B-29 bombers could finally strike the Japanese homeland. Taking Saipan meant the U.S. could bring the war straight to Japan's cities, its factories, even the Imperial Palace. For the Japanese, that was unthinkable. And that's why the fight for Saipan would be unlike anything the Americans had ever faced. The men defending it weren't just soldiers. They were fanatical followers of an emperor worshipped as a living god. Emperor Hirohito had decreed no Japanese soldier, no civilian, no child could surrender the island. Death was to be chosen over defeat. The Marines and soldiers knew exactly what that meant. Every bunker, every cave, every cliff would be defended to the last man. Every step forward would be paid for in blood. And as their landing craft ground towards Saipan's reef on the morning of June 15, 1944, each man knew the truth. This was the price of opening the gateway to Japan. Music. O'Brien, Baker, and Salomon. Landing craft carved through the reefs. As U.S. Marines of the 2nd and 4th Divisions spilled into Saipan's surf, into absolute chaos. Machine guns ripped the waves. Mortars churned the sand. Bodies dropped in the breakers. By nightfall, the Marines had clawed out a foothold. But the price, 5,000 casualties in just the first 24 hours. 2 days later, the U.S. Army stormed ashore. Among them, the 27th Infantry Division's 105th Regiment, led by Lieutenant Colonel William J. O'Brien. He was a born leader. When American tanks, blinded by smoke, started shelling their own men, O'Brien sprinted through enemy fire, climbed onto the Shermans, and forced the gunners to stop, saving dozens of lives. And through June's burning weeks, he led assault after assault, up ridges choked with bamboo, caves spitting death. One of his officers later said, Con O'Brien never once asked a man to go where he wasn't willing to go first. By the end of June, the island was a meat grinder. And standing only 50 yards behind the line was Captain Ben Solomon. He was the regimental dentist. But when the battalion surgeon was killed, Solomon volunteered to run an aid station that never slept. Day and night, he fought a different war. Scalpels against shrapnel, morphine against shock. As Soldiers and Marines staggered back, bleeding and broken. He was their last chance. But Saipan wasn't done yet, because hiding in the island's jungles were still tens of thousands of Japanese soldiers, and their emperor demanded they fight to the death. One of the men facing them was a lanky farm boy from New York, Private Thomas Baker. Quiet, unshakable. In the first weeks of the battle, he was everywhere, grenade in one hand and one in the other. On June 19th, he calmly shot a sniper out of a palm tree, then turned his rifle on an entire squad charging through the brush. By the end, he'd cut them all down. And yet, for all the blood already spilled, the island's darkest day was still ahead. The largest banzai charge in history. Heat. Going to miss those Hawaiian girls. Oh yeah, those girls. The jungle's edge erupted. Japanese officers, swords raised high, and 5,000 fanatical troops surged forward. Bayonets fixed, voices rising in one feral scream. Banzai. The ground was literally shaking under their charge. The largest banzai attack of the entire war. Colonel William O'Brien, standing square on the front line. For half a heartbeat, he freezes. Just stop for a second and really picture yourself there. Imagine it. A screaming horde pouring over the earth like something straight out of a zombie apocalypse. But this wasn't Hollywood. This was real. And it actually happened. Anyways, let's get back to the story. Lieutenant Colonel O'Brien takes a breath and starts moving. 2 Colt 45s, one in each hand. He strides the trench, dragging men up by their collars, shouting them awake. He fires until both pistols click empty, before a bullet slams into his shoulder. Seriously wounded and staggering, he refuses help and hauls himself onto a jeep mounted 50 calories. He slams the butterfly triggers down. The heavy gun roars to life, ripping bloody aisles through the stampede. His men rally on. The savage beat of that 50. Up front, the ground caves under Private Thomas A. Baker's foxhole. Dirt rains down. He bursts free, face to face with an insane enemy. A Japanese machine gun pins his squad to the dirt. But Baker doesn't wait. He grabs a bazooka, sprints into the open, and fires point blank. The gun and its crew vanish in a fireball. He drops the tube, swings onto a machine gun, and rakes 12 charging soldiers from the field. 6 more rise from the grass to ambush his men. He cuts them all down, too. Still they come, wave after wave, with no end. Just 50 yards away, the battalion aid station is pure chaos. Captain Benjamin Salomon, a dentist turned battlefield surgeon, works like a man possessed. Wounded men pour in, filling every cot. Blood everywhere. The groans of the dying drown out the raging battle outside, and then the canvas walls start to tremble. The earth itself quakes as the Japanese stampede closes in. The tent flaps rip open. A Japanese soldier bursts in. Salomon rips an M1 from a patient's hands and drops him with a single shot. For more crawl under the tent walls. Salomon moves like a man possessed. Bayonets one through the chest, pivots and shoots another. Smashes a third skull with the rifle. But then tackles the last one, throttling him to the dirt and beating him to death with his bare fists. He rips free, chest heaving. Then he shouts over the chaos, "Get the wounded out. I'll cover you." Grabbing another M1, he bolts from the tent, charging headlong into the battle. Back at the point of attack, O'Brien's 50 chugs like a war drum, tracers, stitching across the plain. Blood sprays into the dawn light as enemy after enemy falls. O'Brien bellows above the roar, his voice cutting through fear, holding his line by sheer will. The machine gun clicks dry. Baker hurls it aside as untold numbers of screaming Japanese soldiers pour in. He grips his rifle like a club, smashing it across faces, splitting skulls. In that moment, he isn't just a man. He is what the Vikings would have called a berserker. No one knows exactly how many men he took out, but what we do know is that he swung that M1 Garand until it shattered in his hands. By now, Baker is torn apart, bleeding, broken so badly. Wounded, there's no way any normal human being would still be standing. But Baker isn't normal. His buddy lunges to drag him out, but fire rips the man down. Baker snarls, refuses to risk another life for his own. The aid station is gone, trampled under the surge through a hail of fire with his M1. Salomon fights his way to a 30 caliber machine gun. The crew is already dead. Without hesitation, he drops behind the weapon, slams the trigger, and rips lanes through the horde. Bodies fall in heaps. The ground shakes, but he doesn't stay put. Again and again as the Japanese press forward, he drags the heavy gun to new ground. For times he moves it, reloads, and fires. Each burst, buying his wounded brothers more precious seconds to escape. He is a one-man wall of fire holding back hundreds with nothing but grit, steel, and the will to fight to the last round. O'Brien welded to the 50. His body's riddled with holes. Nobody understands how he's still upright. But that muse thud never stops. Body stack like cordwood in front of the gun. Blood soaks his sleeve, dripping down the grips. And still he roars his men into the fight. Every burst ripping lanes through the horde. Baker riddled with holes. He's slumped against a tree now alone. A single M1911 rests heavy in his hand. 8 rounds left. As the horde closes in, Baker steadies his breath. Blood runs down his chest as he lifts the pistol. He sights down the barrel and waits for them to come. Salomon, the dentist, is at this moment quite literally a one-man wrecking crew, dragging that 30 calories, dropping behind it, and tearing lanes through the charge. Again and again. Firing, shifting, firing. But they just kept coming. The aftermath. Applause. As the Americans pushed back across the plain, the full cost of the banzai came into focus. The Japanese had thrown everything they had, nearly 5,000 men, into one last desperate charge. Over 3,000 bodies lay stacked directly in front of the 105 THS shattered positions. But the defenders paid dearly. In less than 12 hours of fighting, the 105th Infantry's 1st and 2nd Battalions were nearly destroyed. 406 killed, 512 wounded. Entire companies had been reduced to a handful of survivors. And then amid the wreckage, they found the men who had stood like immovable pillars in the storm. O'Brien, still at the jeep, slumped behind the silent 50 calories. The ground in front of him was littered with enemy dead, stacked 3 feet high in his field of fire. His men never forgot the sight. Baker propped against the tree where they had left him, his M1911 empty, 8 brass casings scattered at his feet. 8 Japanese soldiers sprawled before him, one man's defiance carved into the earth. Salomon collapsed behind a 30 caliber machine gun, his body ripped by bullets and bayonets, the gun barrel still warm. 98 Japanese. The Saipan 3 Medal of Honor soldiers lay stacked in an arc in front of him. He had dragged that weapon to for different positions, firing, shifting, and firing again, buying his wounded patients every last second to escape. Their sacrifice was not just valor. It was decisive. Had the 105 THS line totally collapsed, the Japanese could have swept into the rear, overrun aid stations, artillery batteries, and supply lines. The entire northern flank of Saipan would have been shattered. Instead, O'Brien, Baker, and Salomon's defiance bought the time needed for reinforcements to seal the breach. That day saved the American foothold on Saipan, and holding Saipan meant the United States could finally bring B-29s within range of Tokyo, making the island one of the most strategically vital victories of the Pacific War. Lieutenant Colonel William O'Brien received the Medal of Honor posthumously for refusing to leave his men, for rallying them in the storm, and for fighting literally to his last bullet. Private Thomas A. Baker was awarded posthumously as well for standing alone under a tree with his .45 and showing the enemy that even mortally wounded an American soldier would not yield. Captain Benjamin Salomon, because he was a medical officer, was denied recognition for decades. His use of a machine gun considered a violation of the Geneva Conventions. But in 2002, almost 60 years later, he to receive the Medal of Honor. His family accepted it on his behalf, at long last, giving his sacrifice the honor it deserved. And the advancing enemy soon descended on Captain Solomon's aid station to defend the wounded men in his care. Captain Solomon killed several enemy soldiers who had entered the aid station. As the advance continued, he ordered comrades to evacuate the tent and carry away the wounded. He went out to face the enemy alone and was last heard shouting, "I'll hold them off until you get them to safety. See you later." In the moments that followed, Captain Solomon single-handedly killed 98 enemy soldiers, saving many American lives, but sacrificing his own. As best the army could tell, he was shot 24 times before he fell, more than 50 times after that. And when they found his body, he was still at his gun. If you made it this far, thank you. My goal is simple: to preserve and share the stories of American warriors like William O'Brien, Thomas Baker, and Ben Salomon, men who stood against impossible odds, who fought not for glory, but for the man next to them. These aren't just war stories, they're legacies. Unfortunately, the algorithm doesn't always reward these tales of American grit. So if you believe these names should never fade, please share this story. Hit that like button. Drop a comment. Should O'Brien, Baker, and Salomon be household names? Should their stand at Saipan rank with Thermopylae and the Alamo? Sources are linked below. Medal citations, battle maps, first-hand accounts. Thanks for watching, and remember this: not all front lines are trenches. Sometimes they're a jeep, a tree, or a blood-soaked tent. And sometimes they're held by a single man who refuses to let the line break.